here. Good morning, everyone. Honorable guests and distinguished scholars, members of our panel, Society Ripe for Change. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Dr. Sami, for that inspiring lead-in. And profound gratitude to the National Council of Resistance of Iran, Washington office for this convention, elevating the Iranian people's unyielding stand against tyranny on the global stage. The world is finally watching. Today, we frame Iran's seismic shift, a nation on the edge of transformational change. Over 4 decades of repression and corruption have cracked the regime's facade, forging unbreakable solidarity among people, diaspora, and organized resistance. This isn't fleeting unrest. It's the maturation of social readiness for overthrow. Guided by clear inquiries, questions we will be addressing on the panel are: 1, what sustains discontent? What are the root causes? 2, how does the discontent manifest it? What are the signs and signals? 3, where is the role and influence of the opposition? Where is it headed? We will hear more about this fact-based research from our scholars on the panel who have dissected the data, trends, and lived truth. No speculation, no slogans, just evidence, illuminating history's pivot. This moment is not an echo. It's Iran's thunderous call for rebirth. Witness the convergence, Iran's fury, women's fearless vanguard, resistance iron organization, and the mullah's widening fissures. The regime, marred by tyrannical terrorism, massacres, and the world's highest executions, crumbles, yet uprising escalates. From 2022's national uprisings, blaze to today's tipping point. Isolation breeds desperation. This demands our advocacy, a clear-eyed look at scholarly data exposing the regime's fragility. Iran isn't imploding, it's igniting toward a democratic, secular, non-nuclear republic. Why now? Because history whispers. Ignored sparks become infernos. Let's explore why this inflection reshapes the world and why we must act. Let's take a look at a historical analogy. Envision America's 1776 forge, Enlightenment's fire, patriots' courage, from Jefferson's bold pen to farmers' grit, exposing injustice, massacres, and unyielding oppression. A coalition of statesmen, scholars, intellectuals, militias bled for the Bill of Rights, inalienable freedoms over monarchical fiat. Letters smuggled, ideas ignited, reason triumphed over blind faith. Iran burns that same flame. The MEK and National Council of Resistance, they are the opposition's beating heart. Underground cells to excite visionaries, enduring 47 years of torture with no hate, only hope. Jefferson nailed it. Enlightened reason must prevail over blind faith. That's Iran's method. Protest as pamphlets, resistance as midnight rides. From tyranny's chains to a republic's dawn, America seized it. Iran won't wait. If not now, when? If not us, who? This panel delivers that evidence, presenting three perspectives dissecting Iran's readiness through empirical rigor. Let's begin with our voices, setting the context and sharing perspectives and insight. First, Professor Kazarunian will cover social and economic drivers of this content. What sustains this content? Professor Kazarunian, a globally recognized engineering leader and former dean of UConn's College of Engineering, a fellow of ASME and AIMBE, he's advised over 50 organizations on robotics, design automation, and strategic planning. Dr. Hossein Saidian, a professor of computer science at the University of Kansas with over 170 publications in software engineering and cybersecurity. And Dr. Ashraf Zadshir, a physician, educator, and clinical researcher, core faculty in a family medicine residency program. She is the recipient of California Women of the Year Award and has authored numerous peer-reviewed studies and medical textbooks. Okay, Dr. Kazarunian.
Thank you, Ms. Yazani. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be with you today, to be among you. It is an honor to be one of you. And it's also a distinct privilege for me to be able to present the results of the research of a group, a team of scholars, colleagues that work on the project being presented today. Let me frame the conversation today by defining three mega economic trends in Iran. Iran's economic collapse is structural. It is not temporary, and by no means it is the result of the sanctions. Economy has become a tool for repression and plunder, a tool for looting the country. And economic discontent has turned into a revolutionary force. It is accelerating towards a total regime collapse. And these megatrends manifest themselves in many areas, including income, inflation, oil, employment, banks, taxes, the private sector, inequity, housing, nuclear costs, and many other areas. We'll talk about some of them now. Let's start with GDP. That shows the scale of economic crisis. Gross domestic product in Iran is now ranked 117th per capita in the world. This is a shameful ranking to have for a resource-rich country like Iran. Our food inflation is close to 60%. Medicine has been up for about 700 to 800 times over the last 3 to 4 years. Close to 80% of the Iranians live below the poverty line. Long breadlines, kidney cell signs, prostitution on the streets. These are all signs of a total moral collapse for the country. Inequity in housing, it is extreme. When I was putting this slide together, it brought tears to my eyes. The rich people, the mafia that owns Iran in many ways, the Aghazadeha on one side, and then you look at the poor people and how they live and extreme conditions of their living. 1% of the country owns more than 30% of the riches of the country. More than half of the people in Iran practically don't own anything. Looking at the oil, it is either a trap for, it's actually more of a trap for the economy of the country. Oil is about 60% of the government's revenue and about 80% of the exports in Iran. That means that for every $1 in the price of crude oil, there is a fluctuation of $1 billion in the income for the country. And that shock exposure is extreme. And that practically means that Iran's economy is living is based on luck rather than strategic planning. Average worker earns about $150 to $200 per month, among the lowest in the world. Income stagnation has been persisting since 1980s. Casualization means switching and shifting from permanent positions to temporary hire, and migration to cities are resulting trends. And only 2.4 million jobs have been created in 16 years. That is about 150,000 jobs per year. To put that in context, that is 1/10 of the jobs that a country the size of Iran needs. About 13 million people are unemployed. That is nearly half of the workforce. Nearly 80% of the workforce of the Iranians lack stable jobs. An economy has been practically become a military oligarchy. Sepah Pastaran, IRGC, officially controls 1/3 of the economy. The actual number is closer to 60%, and they own half of the oil exports. This leads to a vicious cycle of plunder, repression, leading to more plunder. And nuclear cost, since 1990s in Iran, is estimated to be about $2 trillion. That is that's a resource that could have been used to build the country. Instead, it has led to more isolation and more repression. And looking at the banking situation, that's not a better picture either. Bank Milli Iran, National Bank of Iran, its capital adequacy is -5%. Capital adequacy, CAR, is a ratio that is used to measure the health of a banking system. Bank Sepah Bank, it has a capital adequacy ratio of -23%. That means that practically these two banks are bankrupt. They're operating in bankruptcy. Very similar to IND Bank that was bankrupt a couple of months ago. And all of these banks are suffering because of the toxic assets, unpaid loans, and corrupted internal loans that are given to the ruling regime. The capital adequacy ratio actually for a healthy bank in the world is about 10%. Taxes is another story. Taxes have quadrupled over the last few years. They are now 4 times the income that the government has from oil. What that means is that the poor in the country is financing the repression and financing the plunder of the country. And the small business, ease of doing business in Iran is ranked by IMF to be 127th out of 190. Again, a miserable, shameful position to have. And most of it is because of the dominance of state-owned pseudo companies. And ideas like innovation, business development, business planning, those ideas are unheard of in a small business environment in Iran. So in closing, plunder, repression, and nuclear ambitions and proxy wars are deepening the poverty in Iran. Reform is impossible without totally collapsing this regime and rebuild again. Iran's social fabric is breaking under the weight of inequity, and finally, discontent has become defiance and resistance, and that is leading to an accelerating path towards total regime collapse. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kazarunian. Your insights on the economic stranglehold, the plunder, the lost jobs, the stolen futures reveal why this discontent isn't just simmering. It's boiling over. We appreciate that unflinching analysis. Dr. Saidian, please share how these burdens are pushing Iran toward real change. How is it manifested? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Yazbani. Good morning, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be in this great convention. and thank you to all of you for coming here today. Before I start, I would like to emphasize that our team, as Professor Kazarunian stated, have done extensive research. However, because of the limitation of time, we will not be able to present everything here. However, all of the data, all of our references, etc., will be published on the NCRI's US's website immediately after the conference. So let me start. My presentation addresses the core foundational problem of the Iranian regime, and that is its illegitimacy. It has never been a legitimate government. Let's be clear. The Khomeini regime was not the legitimate choice after the 1979 revolution. He stole the revolution. The Shah's dictatorship had eliminated all genuine democratic groups and organizations. A power vacuum had been created, and Khomeini exploited that vacuum. Khomeini's rule was ahistorical. It ran entirely counter to the 120-year arc of Iranian history, which consisted of continuous struggle for democracy, secularism, freedom. That struggle has continued since the constitutional revolution of 1906. A regime with no democratic mandate must find other ways to survive. Because it cannot rule by the ballot box, it built its identity on three pillars: internal repression, export of revolution, or better known as export of terrorism, and development of nuclear weapons, which was supposed to guarantee its survival. I will argue that this regime has miserably lost in all of those fronts. Let's start with the most visible failure, the Iranian regime's nuclear project. The regime wanted this project to be its ultimate guarantor of survival. But this project was stopped dead in its track, not by a foreign intelligence agency, but by the Iranian resistance itself. In 2012, the NCRI-US delivered a breakthrough revelation of the secret Natanz site. This courageous act of patriotic intelligence, let me repeat that. This courageous act of patriotic intelligence exposed the mullahs to the world. That moment changed everything. It put a tightening rope around the regime that has never been fully removed, leading to crippling international sanctions and, of course, diplomatic isolation. The pillar that meant to provide strength only provided vulnerability. The world has become much safer because the Iranian regime's nuclear project was exposed. And as a result, the world owes a big thank you to the NCRI-US. However, And of course, the international community must remain highly vigilant. There should be absolutely no opportunity for the Iranian regime to ever have any kind of access to nuclear weapons. Now, what about the export of revolution, or actually export of terrorism? This was meant to be the regime's primary tool for projecting regional dominance. For decades, this meant the plundering of national wealth, billions of dollars which were meant for infrastructure, which were meant for hospitals, for health, for education, was stolen from the Iranian people to fund terror groups. Their biggest gamble, the regime's biggest gamble, was pouring money and manpower into saving Bashar Assad's brutal dictatorship. And what is the result? Total strategic failure. The Assad regime is gone. The entire Hezbollah leadership has been eliminated, and other proxy groups are scattered and are under severe pressure to dismantle. This pillar brought neither power nor influence, only more international isolation and, of course, the hatred of the neighbors. We now turn to the third pillar, and the most telling sign of the regime's weakness. It's escalating repression. The numbers on this slide are shocking for a reason. We have seen executions triple during the past 3 years, from 553 to over 1,600. And these are, of course, only the executions that we know about. With over 5,000 people on death row and 2 million arrests every year, the judiciary in Iran is not about justice. It is about repression. It is a fear factory. This is not a strength. This is a desperate grip of a regime whose only remaining language remains pure violence. This slide, please pay attention, this slide illustrates the extreme measure used to suppress even the slightest association with the MEK. We see individuals who were recently executed, like Mr. Hassani and Mr. Ehsani, and others facing imminent execution, like Mr. Wafai Sani, and 16 others who are under death penalty, simply for expressing support for the MEK. Equally shocking are the lengthy prison terms. For example, 2 recognized Olympiad winners were given 16-year sentences only because they expressed support for MEK. No physical activities, no activities other than just showing support for the MEK. Maryam Akbari is serving 17 years for seeking justice for her siblings who were executed during the 1980s, and they were, of course, affiliated with the MEK. How does a regime with these gross human rights violations try to hide their crime? They have tried to build a digital wall of censorship and control. Iran is ranked 177th out of 180 for press freedom, and its internet score is a dismal 16 out of 100. They block all popular platforms and websites. Why? because they cannot let the truth about their corruptions, about their crimes, about their repression to get out. And of course, they do not want the videos of protests to get out either. Like all dictatorship, they try to control information. They have some 18 units, 18 institutions dedicated to monitoring online activity. But as we will discuss later, this information control is not working. This regime's brutality is not limited to political opponents. It also heavily targets minorities, ethnicities, and different minorities. Minorities like Baluchis and Kurds face horrific discrimination. Consider this chilling statistics. The Baluchi community constitutes only 5% of the population, yet they account for 20% of executions in Iran. As if political repression wasn't enough, the country's environment and infrastructure are collapsing due to decades of mismanagement and corruption. Iran is facing a severe water crisis. The per capita availability has dropped by 80%, despite having the world's second largest natural gas reserve. The people suffer daily from gas and electricity shortages. The environmental degradation is catastrophic. 90% of wetlands are critical, and cities suffer from toxic air pollution over 2/3 of the year. So let's bring all of this together. We have detailed a regime sustained only by execution, censorship, and economic and environmental ruin. But the most important point is that despite all of this, the Iranian people are more defiant than ever. You can see this defiance in the growth of organized resistance units, and you can hear in the brave public chants of death to Khamenei across all of the cities. This converging crisis have created a society that is boiling over. The regime has shown it can only destroy. It cannot govern. And the people are showing us that an explosion of freedom is not just possible, it is inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saidian, for your breakdown of these raw manifestations, the protests, the boycotts, the unbreaking spirit. Paint a vivid picture of a people rising as one. Thank you for that clarity. Dr. Ashraf Zadshir, your perspective will light the path forward. Thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Ladies, gentlemen, honorable guests, it's an honor to be here today. My colleagues, give me a second. My colleagues have outlined the regime's profound economic, social, political, and legitimacy crisis. I will now examine how these crises have manifested in their most consequential form, sustained revolt. From isolated protest grown into a sustained, organized challenge to the regime's survival. Let's focus on three defining uprisings that together mark a turning point from which regime cannot return. Three nationwide revolts shaking all 31 provinces. Revolts from 2017, 2019, and 2022. Different triggers, one demand: an end to clerical rule. Each one ended a fallacy, a myth. Let's start with 2017. The December 2017 uprising marked a turning point. Within a few days, protests spread to 142 cities, led by young, educated, and unemployed Iranians. The key slogan, reformer, hardliner, the game is now over, captured a new reality: a rejection of change from within and open defiance of supreme leader. The 2017 uprising shattered the regime's four-decade narrative of competing factions. Iranians made clear that they have moved beyond the regime's manufactured divisions and now reject the system in its entirety. In November 2019, a sudden fuel price hike ignited Iran's largest uprising in 4 decades, spreading to over 200 cities. Protests went beyond the street, striking regime strongholds, baggage bases, police stations, Friday prayer offices, and a state bank, symbols of repression and corruption. The crackdown was ruthless. 1,500 killed, thousands arrested. That uprising ended the myth that lower economic class, the underprivileged, supported the regime, a myth that was also promoted in the West. 2 years later, September 2022, the death of Mahsa Amini, a young Kurdish woman, triggered a nationwide movement spanning 280 cities. This time, the message was unmistakable. The slogan, "Down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the leader," summed up a national consensus, rejection of all forms of dictatorship. Whether monarchical or theocratic. Women and youth stood at the forefront, leading chants, organizing online, and facing bullets with courage. 1,500 demonstrators killed, 90,000 young Iranians were detained, and over 300 IRGC members were killed. This was no longer about reform. It was a generational rebellion demanding complete political change. As you have seen, down with oppressor, be it the Shah or the leader. Today, opposition reached far beyond the streets. MEK-affiliated resistance units, now active across more than 31 provinces, have evolved into a structured and organized resistance force energizing communities, sustaining defiance, shattering the wall of repression, and igniting nationwide uprising. Within last year alone, the resistance units have carried out over 39,000 acts of defiance, including 3,000 attacks on IRGC and Basij bases across all 31 provinces. Election boycotts have become another weapon of resistance, with voter turnout dropping to as low as 8 to 10%, the regime's political facade is collapsing. Across these years, a clear cycle has emerged: grievance, repression, economic plunder, renewed grievance. The regime's survival strategy, built on repression, corruption, and proxy militias, ironically, creates the very conditions that reignite rebellion. Every crackdown deepens poverty and anger. Every protest crushed sows the seeds of the next one. In short, the regime's logic of survival has become its logic of self-destruction. To conclude, Iran's opposition has evolved from scattered protests to a permanent state of defiance. It is younger, more educated, and more conscious than ever before. It rejects both monarchy and theocracy, demanding a democratic, secular republic. The real question now is not whether another uprising will happen, but when, and whether the world will be ready to recognize and support the Iranian people's demand for freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rzadchi. Your examination of the opposition's rising power and the regime's dead end path gives us not just analysis, but hope grounded in facts. Thank you all three for this powerhouse discussion. It's exactly why we are here. We didn't come for comfort. We came for the truth, and it's ugly. The economy is gutted, the water is gone, hospitals ration hope. Regime's tools, internet kills, public gallows, midnight raids, but look past the rubble. Protests swell, women walk fearless, kids chant in streets. MEK's resistance units, echoes of Paul Revere, one rider, one whisper, world changed. Data says the regime is losing. Defections, cash runs dry, control slips. Scholars just proved the arc of history, it's bending. Foundations exist, rule of law, elected councils, zero nukes, no dictatorship survives if Iranians refuse to bow. Jefferson was right, reason over faith. America tore off its chains once, Iran's doing it, live streaming it on mobiles. This isn't the end. It's Iran's constitution. It's the Bill of Rights. It's shot at breathing free. Towards the Iran's democratic revolution, fiercely together. So we would like to end with a few questions from the audience. It seems we've received a lot of flood of questions, but one question that's on many minds, and perhaps one that defines our moment, is when an economy built on plunder finally collapses, how do we even begin to rebuild? Is it possible at all, or has the damage gone too far? Dr. Kazrin, with you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. So after the regime collapse, I think the transitional government and all the governments after that must make radical transparency their capital. That radical transparency is what is needed to build trust. That's what's needed to eradicate corruption. Build the trust that is required itself is a prerequisite to bring burnt generations, as they call them in Iran now, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and now very soon Generation Alpha, back to the productive ranks. That trust is needed to bring many millions of Iranians in diaspora back to either on temporary basis or more permanent basis, connect them with motherland, connect them with productivity in Iran, convince them to start investing in Iran. That is the trust that is needed to actually reintegrate Iran in the world. But then immediately right after that, the transitional government needs to attend to the needs of the 80% that are below poverty line. We need to do probably what President Roosevelt did to bring America out of 1930s depression. Large-scale public works, but it has to be radically, again, distributed. It cannot be Tehran-centric. It has to be people-centric. It has to be in places that the work is needed. That's how you create immediately millions of jobs. But then beyond that and long-term, absolutely we can catch up. We cannot catch up to the rest of the world that we are behind by many decades, but we can catch up by changing the game and changing the game plan. We have to leapfrog technology. We have to create a knowledge-based economy. We have to create digital manufacturing versus the traditional 1970s and 80s manufacturing. And ironically, we actually have an advantage because we don't need to deal with legacy industry, the industries of 70s and 80s that we need to replace. We can start afresh. We have to deal with we have to develop digital manufacturing. We have to have digital twins in almost every organization that we build. We have to have a smart agriculture, AI-supported agriculture, drone-supported agriculture. We need to have platforms, digital platforms for rapid re-skilling the labor. So there are so many things that we can do to create that leapfrog leap. I hope that answers part of the question.
Yes, definitely. One more question from the audience. What is the event that needs to occur for regime change, and how close is it from happening? What are the gauges or signals?
Was that for me? Could you repeat that one more time, please?
What is the event that needs to occur for regime change, and how close is it from happening? What are the gauges and signals?
Okay, well, for the regime change, right?
Yes.
Of course, we see the contentions, we see the people on the street, we see the chants, we see the extensive network of resistant units that are very active. And we know that the society is ready for explosion. We have seen the episodes in, for example, last 2-3 uprising, and each and every one of them became stronger. It was widespread, and of course, the Iranian regime tried to suppress it a lot more violently. But the point is that we know that there is going to be a next one, and the next one, it's definitely going to, if it's not going to be the final one, it will be a turning point. So the very fact that the resistant units are highly active inside Iran, it is a representative sign that the society does want to change, and that change is taking place. We can also look at the regimes infighting among themselves. Okay, so each unit is basically very opposed to the other unit. So these are also signs of this not being stable, not being cohesive, not having a policy where all elements of the regime agree on. So in my, going back to, for example, 1979, these are the signs that the regime is collapsing.
Thank you, Dr. Saidian. Thank you. Out of the time, we have to close the panel. Thank you very much.